Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chris and Andre Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Big Rant. Every week we pick a topic and we go into a deep dive on it. Usually it's something that's kind of near and dear to our hearts. This week it's something that is pretty serious topic, so we're not going to joke around too much here at the beginning, but there's been a lot going on in the U.S. with regards to mass shootings, especially the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, and shooting in Buffalo, which we talked about in the previous episode. I think there was also a shooting in Southern California at a church. There was another shooting in Illinois.
Yeah.
By my count, there have been, not my count, but in the research that I did, there's been 27 school shootings just alone in the United States so far in 2022, and over 250 what they categorize as mass shootings.
And a mass shooting is defined typically by 4 or more people involved in the attack. So
Right.
I don't really, and I'm not trying to cut you off, but
Nope.
Let me go back to something you said. Yeah, our conversations are really just like our thoughts about it, and this is just something that is perplexingly weird to me the more I get around it. A couple weekends ago, went to, or was it? I don't remember when it was. My house is a mess. Things are falling apart. My routines are like all botched. But some friends invited us over to their house, and we're sitting around. And one of my friends was physically angry, talking about Uvalde, and like I've never seen him I've seen him upset, but we're always typically just having a good time. But if you've ever noticed somebody when they're physically angry, they fidget and their hand movements get kind of like, not erratic, but they move their hands a lot. They arch, and it was really noticeable. And he just said, "We should kill this motherfucker," basically, And I'm like, whoa,
slow down, Maurice.
I've never heard him talk about that. But he's also very, he's the type of guy that when our kids go to movies, when they're, especially now our group has less and less young people, but he takes all the kids to the movies, and whenever they want, he spoils them like they're his own kids, right? And he was just so angry. And it was like 10 of us sitting on the deck. And I was like, all right, let's try something out. Start at the very beginning of the line, "Hey, what would you do to solve it?" And what happened was somebody would start to say something, and then somebody would cut them off. And I was like, whoa, nope, you've got to give this person a chance to say what they would do to solve it. And we struggled through that for the first 3 or 4 people, with having people not cut somebody else off and get their complete thoughts out. And this is 10 people, literally 10 people. And at the end of the exercise, it said, everybody here has got, propositions on how we can solve this. And I didn't ask who owned guns. I didn't ask who was I'll leave it at that, because it's not a Second Amendment thing with most of my friends. It's about people that want to own guns. And 2 of them are like, well, yeah, they're like, we own guns. I'm like, yeah, I can totally tell by your answer. And they didn't present their bias with their answer, but I could tell they're bent towards guns with their answer, right? They didn't have to say, well, I don't want anybody to take my guns away or anything like that. It was just that you could tell, if you read in between the lines, that they actually own weapons.
Right.
And I said, just want to let everybody know that everybody gave good answers, and the reason why we can't solve it is because we can't get through 10 people, and people, present their ideas on how to solve it, and listen for the commonalities and listen for actual solutions. We can't get through 10 people in just a simple exercise and reminding people not to cut the other person off long enough to get to the end of the line. And it just really opened my eyes that a lot of times I don't think we're divided. I think that we're reacting to the sense of inaction. Like, Uvalde could be the youngest group of kids that were murdered, but Parkland and Columbine and Stony, what was the other?
Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook. We can, as a country, we watch the youngest of our population get murdered in Buffalo, and in the church in California, we watch the elderly. So we can dispose of the most vulnerable at the youngest end of the spectrum to the oldest end of the spectrum and do absolutely nothing continuously, and nobody says anything, nobody cares, and it's not a vote, it's not something to get your base riled up on.
The elites who dominate our culture tell us that firearms lie at the root of the problem. By elites, I refer to some of the most powerful politicians and their allies in the media, the leaders of the largest corporations and many of the most famous celebrities, and those who echo and amplify them.
And that message has got, I don't know, that's my brain dump on that. But we've literally watched for years now the youngest and the oldest, the most vulnerable from each end of the spectrum, get murdered, assassinated, and not to mention the church in South Carolina, just brutally, and do nothing year after year. And you're saying in 2022, and it's like June, there have been 27 shootings in schools. Extrapolate those numbers out. What happens by the end of the year?
Yeah. And I think, I don't know. I mean, like, I struggle to come up with a solution as well, honestly. Like,
hold on a
you know,
second,
or yeah.
I want to jump in here real quick because I just looked it up. There's a website. It's gunviolencearchive.org, and they keep track of every mass shooting episode in the United States. According to their records, there were 21 mass shooting events in just this month alone. And if you read into further, NPR did a similar thing, and their tally is 246 mass shootings just this year so far. That is horrific. Over 200 mass shootings. We're barely halfway through the year.
Yeah. I mean, 2022 is on pace to match the level of gun violence that we saw last year, which was the highest level of gun violence since they started recording these statistics. So things aren't getting any better, right?
The solutions are, I think we can, like people say, common sense solutions. Mm-hmm. Well, tell me what's common sense when it comes to guns, right? Can we remove the argument of the Second Amendment from gun control?
No.
And if we can do that, we can probably solve some things.
Should we be able to? Yes. Can we? I don't think that people are willing to have that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that enough people are willing to look at it like that. I think that is the fallback more often than not. When everything else fails, it will eventually come back to, well, it's in the Constitution.
It's not in the Constitution.
Well, it's in the Bill of Rights.
It's not in the Bill of Rights.
It's the Second Amendment.
Well, my point being, both things are false, right? Contextually, even for like,
yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, the whole argument of the Second Amendment was not each individual should be able to own whatever weapons they want that are intended to kill people or intended to kill. They're not even necessarily people. Like, it's that a well-regulated militia should have the right to bear arms. And obviously the well-regulated part and the militia part are...
You throw that out the window.
Well, that, you know, they didn't really mean that. We can interpret what they meant, right? And now correct me if I'm wrong. Part of it comes back to a Supreme Court ruling from a while back where they basically decided that in this Supreme Court ruling that the Second Amendment did actually mean that individuals had the right to bear
that's what's
arms.
frustrating about that argument is that even the last three people appointed to the Supreme Court are supposed to be like quasi constitutional scholars, right, and traditionalists, where they take the text as it meant, except for Judge Jackson. So, if that's true, then that means that they were liars then, they're liars now, because the term militia, even in historical context, has nothing to do with like citizen. It has to do with a group of citizens that are charged with defending said territory.
Right. Namely, the states. Right. Was
right.
The end kind of goal there was that the states themselves should have the rights to maintain their own regulated militias, so that should the federal government overstep its bounds or become akin to what they were had experienced under British rule, where there were
or European, right?
Exactly, yeah,
because,
not just British, but that the states would have the ability to then fight back, and that the federal government essentially wasn't allowed to tell the states, well, you can't have your own militias.
The hypocrisy is that we have National Guards throughout the territories or states or Commonwealth, so throughout the entire country, and that is a regulated key term, militia, that supersedes. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say that it means militia. No, but it means citizens. Well, which one is it? Because if it's militias, then that means that states don't have the right to have a Air National Guard, Army National Guard. They can't support the Coast Guard, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm confused. So which one is it? Is it a well-regulated militia that's actually, which is probably in most state constitutions, supported and vouched for, and people are okay with that? Or is it every Joe Blow that wants to buy a pistol?
Well, and then Joe's eyes got really big.
I'm sorry.
To me, then the next logical step is, all right, let's say that, let's for the sake of this argument say, okay, it is individuals, right? Citizens individually have the right to bear arms according to the second right, or the Second Amendment. What level of arms, right? Should citizens be allowed to own nuclear weapons? Some people say yes, that ultimately, like, if I want to buy a nuclear bomb, I should be able to buy a nuclear bomb. If I want to buy a tank, I should be able to buy a tank. If I want to buy an F-16, I should be able to buy an F-16.
So I would argue, like, I would even push back and say, well, if you're going to take that in a abstract, literal manner, then you should get a musket.
Right.
Like, all you should be able to have is a musket. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously if the intention was for individual citizens to be able to own whatever firearms they wanted, at the time there weren't, the types of weapons that we have today. I'm not even going to use the term assault weapons, because I know that that's a very sore subject for some people. But
why is that sore? Like a gun's intent, its sole objective is to kill something.
Yep.
Like if we're gonna like dance around that fact, and you say, "Well, I use it to hunt." Well, you're killing something. You're not gonna wing the duck. You're not gonna wing the deer.
The ducks already have wings.
Yeah, you're not gonna try to clip it and see if it fights back. You're trying to kill it, right?
Right.
So let's call it for what it is. It's a weapon to kill something.
I've heard people argue that the reason that that citizens should be allowed to own AR-15s is because it's effective for clearing herds of wild pigs.
Let's go find some pigs.
Today we're going down to Texas. We're gonna take our thermals and we're hunting hogs.
Tonight I'm feeling me.
Highly addictive way to hunt. You're up all night, you sleep during the day. You're the ultimate predator.
Which supposedly do damage to crops and farms and livestock and all this other stuff. And so
I'm
these
sorry,
farmers...
that sounded like code for anti-police officers.
No, and literally like wild, like packs of wild pigs that live.
And we all have that problem. That's why I don't go outside.
I struggle.
To me, it's like there's got to be a different way to do that. Like an AR-15 can't be the only way. We survived for a long time against these marauding packs of wild pigs without AR-15s. You know, like, sure, maybe it is more effective than other manners. Maybe it is the most effective way. That doesn't mean that supersedes the rights of individuals to not have to fear going to school, to not have to fear going to a movie theater, not have to fear going to church or the grocery store. That line of irrational
logic is like saying, I'm buying a tank to till my fields. Yes, right. It can technically do that, especially all the different attachments Shermans have. But just get a fucking tractor.
Yeah.
Stay in your lane.
You're not wrong. Like, I don't know. That's where I feel like so much of these conversations end up being in a lot of ways disingenuous. You know, that there's not an actual desire for a solution of any kind. That ultimately people are more than happy to sacrifice the lives of others in order for them to have what it is that they want.
Well, I'm stuck on like some research I've done like a couple times on when some things became politically charged, whether that be abortion, probably before that, segregation, abortion,
yep,
the Second Amendment. These are nothing more than, I hate the term, but it is the red meat for the quote unquote base. I genuinely do not believe that this country cares. Like, I just don't think it cares. The thing that goes back to my mind is Ted Cruz, like, running away from the whole American exceptionalism thing.
But why does this only happen in your country? I really think that's what many people around the world they cannot fathom. Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism so awful?
You know, I'm sorry you think American exceptionalism is awful.
I think this aspect of it.
You got your political agenda.
No, it's honestly,
God love you.
Senator, it's not. I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
And that's
hilarious.
I could watch that time and time again. And we talked about it way back in the day where I'm anti this whole American exceptionalism thing. We're not an exceptional country.
But then why do people come here by the thousands every day because it's the freest, the greatest, the most prosperous country in the world, in the history of the world. No one has ever done what the United States has done. Thank you, good day. No more questions. I don't
think anybody else would want to, as bad as they're doing it.
So, to be fair, with the bumps and bruises and the flaws this country has, it's still a pretty good country. But yes. I think the term American exceptionalism, it overshadows the reality of the country. It
whitewashes all of the issues that we do face and that we have faced over the 250 plus year history of the country itself. You know, like that's 247, sure. Almost 250.
Okay. I'm not going to knock you your math, but
well, yeah, doing it on the fly here, people.
we don't ask countries their ages. They get very sensitive about that.
Oh, you're the one telling your computer she looks fat in those jeans, so.
And it worked, didn't it?
My point being is that it's kind of like when you go to negotiate a deal, you don't walk in the room saying, I have more money than you, I have more resources than you, you're going to bend to my will.
Unless you're Elon Musk. And then you walk out of the room saying, I don't know how many bots you have.
Yeah. Put it on the table to get chopped off, basically, right? Like, that's not how people build relationships. You don't build relationships boasting first. Because often, more times than not, you get knocked down a few pegs. And I think that's in large part what's happening to this country. People, when when foreign countries, I think it's Germany, says when you visit the United States, don't go to the mall. Don't go to the movie theaters because we want you to come back home because our country's not safe.
Don't go to the mall before 11 a.m. because they're closed. I found that out today.
Well, if your city has a mall, then there's something wrong because
Wilmington still has a mall.
Huh?
And there's been plenty of
still
shootings
has a mall.
in and around it, and they still have that mall.
Yeah.
Man, malls are closing just closing. I have nothing.
To get back to your point about American exceptionalism, I think it's something that I've struggled with mentally lately is this idea that, like, I don't love my country the way that it is right now, but I love the idea of what this country aspires to be. You know, like what this country could be if we just kind of got out of our own way on certain things.
I don't disagree. Like, I was talking to one of my sons about this, and like he got pretty. Like, I used to get pretty defensive when people talked crap about the states. But the reality is, when you look at, like, fun fact, right? Kids my son's age, and I have a pretty good spectrum, in Norway, the same demographic are the wealthiest. They're the when you look at those Norwegian kids to their peers in the rest of the EU, they are the wealthiest. They're not broke. They're not like struggling to pay off college debt, and that's the future of their country. But when you look at the States, kids are moving back home. You can't find jobs. They're buried in student loans and et cetera, et cetera. If you look at Germany, most kids either go to trade school and or college, depending on how they do by their sophomore year. They're not buried by debt. They're not, they're able to start their lives. They're not trying to, they aspire to things that are attainable for them in their environment. And that's not to excuse all the other issues that they have. There's a big push towards nationalism and racist tendencies in Europe right now, and I totally get that. But I'm going to just say, like, if we want to look at category by category of things that we say we're the best in, we're not the best in everything. But I'd much rather say, as a country, we can collaborate with other countries that are doing well and or exceptional in certain areas and learn from them, as opposed to coming in and saying, well, we own democracy. Do you remember January 6th? We own liberty and freedom. People are afraid to go to the grocery store now. We can't send our kids to school because they could get assassinated. In countries that have better gun control, and countries that have had mass shootings, like Norway is another example. The last one that happened was 20 plus years ago. New Zealand, it happened. They banned assault rifles. But we have to go back and look at this archaic interpretation of the Second Amendment as an excuse. We don't value the things that we say we value. What does democracy mean anymore? It doesn't mean what we think it means because the results are pretty negative. So, American exceptionalism doesn't mean I don't love my country. My parents served in the military. I have family members that have lived and died and served this country. My heritage is a heritage of slavery in this country. So if I really, really didn't want to be here, sure, I probably would have left by now. But I do believe, to your point, in what this country could be. Do I believe we have the commitment to get to that? I don't believe that.
I think it's certainly what we're struggling with right now, and have been. It's not like this is brand new,
No,
2022. I think it's something that, really, like, we've struggled with it from the very beginning. Like the Declaration of Independence, right, said,
"We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness."
Right? Like,
except for the people that are building the country.
Yeah.
Eventually, you can be worth 3/5 of the vote.
Yeah. Eventually, you'll get, 20 acres and a mule?
Yeah. And never.
Well, I mean, you get it on paper. You don't actually get it.
It was an idea.
Oh yeah. Oh wait, were you here before we got here? And we definitely don't think you're equal.
Oh yeah, you're dead.
We'll segment off you some land so you can live peacefully. Oh wait, we need part of that land.
Those of you that we leave alive.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the things that and now we're at a point where we talk about United States education, American education, like we're trying to hide these blemishes, right? And I use the word blemish obviously very loosely because this is like a gaping sore. This is not, a pimple on the history of the United States. These are atrocities that were committed not by us, the people that are here right now, but by the people who founded this country, and the people who have carried on that torch throughout. And to sit here and say like, well, whatever they did to get us to the point we are now has to have been acceptable. To say that the ends justify the means, and that where we are now is an ends that is worth justifying those means for, is beyond logical to me.
The hypocrisy that we display on the world stage is amazing. And for those people that say, well, we are, the country on the hill or whatever crap that is, and then they try to say, well, my faith says this. Well, my faith says, why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye when you have a log in your own eye? So it's kind of hard for me to pretend like, so if you don't know that verse from Matthew in the Sermon on the Mount, it's basically, why are you looking at what's wrong with your friend when he's got like a little tiny thing on his shirt and you got ketchup all on the front of your shirt? Like, you're going to forget all about you spilling ketchup, but just to, criticize somebody else. A lot of times the country, that's where we're leaning to. A lot of times we wonder why we can't get out of our own way. It's because we want to be the world's, we want to be. We believe that we can be, and maybe we can be. We can be a symbol of democracy across the globe and show that it does work. Now, the thing that I will say, I will give this country credit for, 250 years, one of the youngest countries on the planet. That's all we got. That's the best thing, and I think that we play this edge pretty well.
We're a baby country, and that's the best thing we can say about ourselves. We don't know any better.
We pulled out a lot. And if you look at comparatively to other countries, France, Germany, Italy, Northern Africa, Egypt, Libya. Liberia is a new country. It didn't really exist before. South Africa didn't used to be South Africa until colonialism.
China, Russia, Japan.
Yeah. We are a young country that has taken the mistakes of the past and that gave us a pretty good head start to accelerate throughout history. Nothing about this country was exceptional. It's just that you had a bunch of people from a bunch of different places that said, hey, this doesn't work. And they were able to
said, hey, there's a lot of free resources around here if we can just get rid of the people that were here before.
Sure. But, I mean, who do you blame there? You still blame Europe, right?
Well, yeah. I mean,
that's not the point.
No, it's not the point.
If you want to look at like apples to apples, young country that utilize its resources, good and bad.
Yeah.
That's our one advantage. Now, how long do we, do we keep figuring it out? I have no clue.
One of the things you said was that earlier was talking about how America acts like we own democracy, and that we want to be the example of democracy, that democracy can work around the globe. And the thing that came to mind for me is our efforts to undermine democracy, especially in South America.
Well, that's coming back to roost.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, there were all of these times where there were democratic governments that were installed, and we didn't like the way that things were going, and so we sent some people in to change things up and to install somebody that was going to be more favorable to the things that we wanted from that country.
So speaking of that, so our president had the meeting or the summit of the Americas, which I think is a subtle nod to the fact that we're the only country that says there are 7 continents.
Yeah. This is America. Which one? America. North America? South America?
Yeah. When I remember as a kid, I was going to school in Europe, and there were only 6 continents. Of course, I also learned the metric system. I didn't learn the standard
Imperial.
Yeah.
Imperial, that's what it's called. I still think in metric, which is so sad. I have to convert stuff in my head. But that's a whole other conversation. But Mexico snubbed the U.S. and because Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela were not invited. Well, okay. But who cares? Right? Why is that a big deal?
Those three countries probably care, but
why? Cuba is it shouldn't matter. Like, we shouldn't be playing these political favorites for, Central and South America. Like, it just shouldn't matter. Mm-hmm. And at any rate, we should just pull out of any influence of those countries. That sounds very, very harsh. But I was thinking about the fact that they're trying to say that the 200 people coming to the border is another border crisis. Okay. Try going to Australia. Try going to a non-EU country. Try going to Canada from even the States. It's pretty difficult. Like, the whole fact that we've made it to where, like, this land of opportunity thing means easy immigration is a terrible, it's a terrible path. We can't contain that. You try moving to Australia. You try moving to Europe. Yeah. If you try moving to Europe, that you have to have like $250,000 liquid cash, prove what you're going to do to take care of yourself, blah 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 blah. Yeah. And we're like, well, I just want to come in because of blah. We should make it just as difficult as other countries make it difficult.
I am certainly not for open borders in the sense that, like, anybody who wants to come should be able to come, right? Like, that just no checks, no balances, nothing along those lines. And yeah, like, I think there should be requirements for sure. I think asylum is obviously a slightly different case.
Sure.
But there needs to be, like, some sort of plan or time limit, right? Along those. Like, again, I think we started off talking about gun control, and I think that it's one of those where it's like, there are commonalities in what most of us want, right? Like, we're not willing to listen to what those are or to identify them and find them in order to actually put practical solutions into place. Like closing the borders completely to say nobody in or out, right?
Right.
Horrible idea. Never going to happen. Building a wall. Also, not an effective.
I'm going to say it's not even that it's never going to happen, that it can never be enforced.
Well, yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Opening everything and having no security whatsoever. Also, terrible idea.
In a semi-related note, I made the mistake of watching Liam Neeson's Marksman movie about him being a semi-border patrol agent that saves a little Mexican kid. I couldn't make it through. The white savior complex was so thick. I felt so sick watching that.
Of course.
We have a lot of
white saviors, self-imposed white saviors.
I think I'm torn. I think that as I look back on, like, Uvalde was literally like 8 days, if I remember correctly, from Buffalo.
Yeah.
Right? Remember when we talked about George Floyd?
Yep.
And I said, hey, I think something's different. Something's different about this. And what was different was that everybody across the globe got to see it.
Yeah.
Uvalde, I think, and I didn't fact check myself, but I believe those are the youngest victims in a a mass shooting in this country. I think they are. I want to believe they are. I can't. Maybe I'll fact check myself later. But you would think that this country cares enough about the quote-unquote future, especially pro-life people. Especially pro-life people.
I've heard that argument said a couple times since. Yep. Calling them hypocrites for not making the changes necessary to protect those kids. Especially with the whole resource officer argument that's been going on.
Yeah, with the... I don't know if I agree. I don't actually. No, I don't agree. I don't agree with the argument of like, oh, we should, have one exit in and out. That's stupid. It's like a fire hazard. We should have more cops in school.
It's not like a fire hazard. It very much is.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, more cops in school, except the statistics show that that's actually a horrible
Makes things
idea.
worse.
Yeah, like I don't need cops in schools.
More violent, more lethal,
and there's only been two documented cases of a resource officer or school police officer
stopping
a mass shooting.
But other than
and they were like
shootings,
almost 20 years apart.
It's been proven that having a resource officer in the school creates an opportunity for children to be considered felons way before they're actually, developed.
Yeah, I actually just watched a documentary about that. I think we have.
I live that. I live that experience. Instead of getting
share your story if you want, Joe.
Sure, why not? It's pretty simple.
You're a felon?
No, well, they thought I was. So this is before I went to college and everything in Hawaii. I was sent to my local high school, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I was very angry at that time, but I told myself, again, 4 months until the school year's over, I'll just keep to myself. I won't make any friends. I'll just shut up. And I was ghosting very well until this one kid kept getting under my skin, and he was the son of the coach, and he was known to do drugs. He was known to do pills, and on one particular day, he pushed it too far. When my friend was trying to tell him, no, I'm not interested, he grabbed her, and I struck him in the back of the head with a physical science book. Then put my stuff away, picked my stuff up, and walked myself to the office to turn myself in because I struck a fellow student. So to their surprise, I turned myself in. I was actually someone I stopped the resource officer who was heading to that classroom, and I told him, hey, that was me. I'm on my way to the office. Okay, he went with me. It was very cordial. They were very confused because apparently no one does that. So afterwards, they asked me.
He totally self-snitched.
Yeah, and everyone asked me why'd I do that? And I told them, and they're like, I'm like, are you aware that this kid sells and does drugs in the school? And they're like, impossible. This is a drug-free campus for 4 years now. I'm like, okay, one, that's a very short amount of years to be bragging. And I said, two, well, I've been watching him long enough. I know everywhere he hides his drugs and who he hides the drugs with.
So you snitched on everybody, yeah?
You damn right I did. Jesus. And they found his drugs, they found his pills, they found his marijuana, they found all of that. And then next thing you know, resource officer comes in and verify with the principal, and then now the principal doesn't want to, press charges or anything. She just wants to. She tried threatening me with that. That could be considered assault, and they could press charges. And you can go to jail, juvenile jail, and all that. And but after there was some legitimacy to my claim. They said, well, we're going to suspend you for 2 weeks. And after those 2 weeks, I come back, and the resource officer stops me and my father at the gates of the school and said that I'm not welcome to come back to this school. And that leads to that we get that resolved eventually. But years later, I'm an adult now. I'm trying to get an apartment, and the apartment complex says I have a warrant for my arrest. And I asked them, what, because warrants have dates. I'm like, when was the date on that? And they said it was back in 2010. I'm like, well, in 2010 I was in high school. I was a juvenile. So what the hell happened? What was that about? Turned out because I created an incident and the resource officer was involved, he had to take documentation out against me in his report. And because it was documentation, they felt they issued a warrant for my arrest. And I was not even 18 yet. I wasn't even 17 yet when it happened.
Were you 16?
I'm pretty sure I was 16 or just
so
about to be
I know in North Carolina, like when I was younger, if you were anything that happened before you were 16, got expunged, and then it changed into 17.
It was 17
lot of
when I
people
was a
that-
kid, yeah.
Yeah, they got
Anything
you got
happening
caught
before
up
the age
in.
of 17, you get expunged. But so that created a whole legal thing where I had to hire a lawyer as an adult to expunge something on a criminal record for a juvenile, just to be told by the court there's nothing to expunge because you are juvenile. All that's gone now.
But you can't issue a warrant without having a charge. So they didn't charge you. How can they issue a warrant?
And that's why I'm telling you, resource officers aren't necessarily.
Man, I should have gone to law
They
school,
they monkey up the situation more than necessary. I haven't met many situations where a resource officer was a good alternative to what a school could do.
So, but the issues aren't. So, let me be clear. We're still talking about the symptom as opposed to the root cause. The root cause is that people can get guns.
Yeah.
Like, let's just talk about that for a little bit. Like,
yeah, I mean I think that's one of the underlying things here is that so many of the recent shootings that we've seen were committed with guns that were obtained legally by the people who ultimately committed the acts. These aren't
right.
Kids that stole guns from their parents or that bought them on the streets. These are people who went to a store, bought these guns, bought tons of ammunitions, and then went and committed an atrocity. Like, what is wrong with that picture, ultimately? How do we not look at that and say something needs to change so that the people in these states, and not like states like California or Texas, but like in these states of mind, aren't able to easily obtain these weapons that allow them to go out and commit these things? Like, I just don't. Am I wrong in feeling that way, or am I still missing the point? Like,
I'm missing the point because I personally feel like every instance there's like you see this echoing of it's a mental health problem. What are you talking about?
It's not.
Yeah,
Texas, and this is a fun fact. So maybe we should look this up and put a chart. Texas is a state that actually has, I think they're like number 45 or 47 in resources towards mental health. They actually have cut a lot of mental health programs as well.
Yeah.
But there's the Governor Abbott was like, oh, it's a mental health problem.
Even though he vetoed multiple bills that would have, or maybe he didn't veto, but yeah, you're absolutely right. That like the state of Texas has gone out of its way to not provide additional mental health resources, but wants to blame the school shooting on mental health.
So it's like, what are you talking? You can't have it both ways here. So I'm really.
You can when you're not trying to have the conversation. And you're really just trying to get people to vote or get people on your.
What are they voting for? Like the inevitability.
Their right to own a gun is what
Chris,
I'm just saying.
I hear you.
Like,
I hear you, but I'm saying like let's look beyond that. The inevitability of this eventually happening, if it happens so frequently in this country, the window of protection is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. You can't go to church, you can't go to school, you can't go to the grocery store, you can't have a confrontation.
You can't wear a mask in the movie theaters anymore.
You can't go to a movie theater. There's the ability for this situation to happen to you is multiplying. The frequency is increasing. It's inevitable. Eventually, like, I'll be honest, I know it sounds kind of messed up, but what happens when one of these, like, what happens if Judge Kavanaugh gets killed?
Right. I don't know. I mean, right? I think I told you after the Buffalo shooting when we were texting that the people who could do something about this, meaning the people who are already elected officials, feel insulated from these events. They don't see this as something that can ultimately affect them. And so it's a large part of the reason that they don't push harder to get something done, or that they actively stand in the way of change occurring on these things. And that it won't be until something actually directly affects them that their mind would be changed. And to be very clear, I am not saying that that's something that I want to have happen. But I don't think that there's anything else. And honestly, I don't even know that that would be enough for some of those.
You're probably right.
I agree with you that they'll most likely be a big PR stunt about, how we need to do something, we need to band together, but it would just get completely mellowed out by whatever else they want to talk about.
Remember the congressional softball game?
Yeah.
People got lit up there.
Yep.
they really don't get it. It was the Republicans saying it was mental health.
Yep.
There's a lot of things where it's just like, you're missing the big picture here.
Well, and that it was Democrats committing the violence.
Right.
Oy.
And that is not to say that Democratic, people who vote Democratic or for the Democratic Party do not commit violence. Like, I'm not saying that they're incapable of violence. I'm just saying, like, that's where we went, right? The answer was blame the Democrats. It all became partisan once again, instead of it being like, my God, guys, we have a problem, then something needs to be done about this. It was, no, you're the ones with the problem. You need to get your base under control. Well, okay, let's pass legislation that would prevent them from getting... Well, no, not like that. All right, let's make mental health resources. Well, no, not like that.
We can't do that.
How are you going to pay for that? Let's put more police officers in school, though. That'll fix it.
Here's what I'll say this again, and I don't want this to be taken out of context. We have found a lot of money to send to Ukraine.
Yeah.
We have found an ungodly amount of money to be sent to Ukraine.
For whatever reason.
Oh, it's all the hustle. It's like the... but I do believe that, and I'm not... And please don't take it...
It's not to say don't help Ukraine. Right?
Yeah, go big or go home, right? Like, you got to fix things and fix them the right way. You've got to encourage people to want to fix things the right way. We got to stop the whole, like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just frustrated. It's like, here's two things that I've been thinking about. If the GOP believes that this is a polarizing subject, they are correct. If China and Russia believe that this country is going to eat itself up from the inside, they are correct. I don't have confidence in our so-called elected ruling class to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
Let me repeat that. I don't have confidence in our so-called elected ruling class that they'll make the right decisions. I secondly do not have confidence in our news media to do their jobs. And I should have sent this clip, and maybe I'll find it and we can probably add it to this, of how many times channel after channel parrots a script of issues.
Yeah.
They're not the bastions of freedom of speech. CNN makes the news for actually stopping the fact that they're going to stop saying breaking news.
Yeah.
They make breaking news by by not using breaking news. There is a lack of confidence in if our opposition, if our ops in the global theater are like really trying to like call us out. They're not wrong, man. I hate to say it.
No, they're not. But that's part of what we talked about earlier with this like idea of American exceptionalism, right? This belief that this is the best it can possibly be because America is the greatest country in the world. And whatever we do is automatically the best that anybody could possibly do. So we can't look at what other countries do to try and make ourselves better, because then we'd be admitting that we're not the greatest country in the world, that we don't do everything right.
If all things you just said are true, then that's pretty scary.
But I don't see any proof to the fact that that's not true. at this point. I mean, at what, like, we pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord in large part because Trump didn't want to admit that other countries might have the answer that America didn't have.
Well, Trump's an idiot.
He is, but and maybe that's just a horrible example.
Yeah, that's a terrible, because everything you say, I'm like, Trump's an idiot. Like, why? Like, how did?
And yeah, he got elected.
He got elected because there's there's a group of this country that feels they're getting left behind. That is a valid fact. Like, we cannot ignore the fact that their concerns are legit. The problem we have is in our democratic society is that we don't address that. We point fingers all day. Like, we hope on idiots like Joe I don't want to call him an idiot, but we hope on people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, who can't, and they don't even feel obligated to talk to their constituents about why and how they make the decisions they make. Because they're getting paid by not dark money, but money right in front of your face. And the media won't say it because their incentive is to play, gosh, oh man, this like blew me up. So there's this new, there's a new PAC, and they've got this ad. Let me look them up. Facebook is a major donor. The Edge Project. I don't have to look it up because it's this guy. He's in Arizona. He owns a water company. He's trying to say, like, the government shouldn't impede tech companies because we'll lose the edge to China.
Inflation is the worst it's been in 40 years. American families are struggling to make ends meet. But instead of controlling costs, Congress is pushing anti-innovation legislation that will destroy American jobs, weaken our national security, and empower China at our expense. 84% of Americans say this is the wrong agenda at the wrong time. Tell Congress to focus on getting inflation under control. Tell them to stop undercutting America's tech innovators.
And I'm like, that sounds pretty... That's a baited message.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who owns the Edge Project? Who's donating to the Edge Project?
Oh, shocking.
It's Facebook. We have let these groups of classes, like, just multiply in our country.
We let our government be bought at this point. I mean,
that's what we get.
Yeah. It got to a point where running campaigns became very expensive. Collecting small donations from individual donors became very difficult. And so they pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed to be able to accept money from large groups. Companies, corporations are people, Except when it comes to liability or taxation or literally anything other than putting money into the pockets of politicians.
Yeah, without oversight, yeah.
Yeah. These PACs, horrible idea. Who thought that was a good idea? Stupid. It's basically lobbying without being lobbyists, like without having to register for anything.
Well, it's because somebody like that may not be me is not going to look and say, who's the Edge Project?
Right.
What would be their intentions of making this message?
I mean, and this all comes back to, in my mind, this all comes back to the same conversation we've had over and over again on this podcast about the complete lack of critical thinking that exists within our society as a whole. That it's just gone by the wayside. That people aren't willing to do anything that isn't just be lazy about how they think and what they think. That the moment they're told something that confirms their worldview, it doesn't matter where it came from. It doesn't matter whether or not it's true. Now I know that I was right.
But what's really sad for me is that everybody's double dipping. I saw that commercial on CNN.
Yeah.
Multiple times. And they try to... Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't trust the media. That's not my intent. My intent is, like, you'll serve yourself better, just like stopping the breaking news shit, to gain people's trust and keep it and maintain it if you're honest, if you refuse advertising dollars. I want to talk about Jimmy Kimmel and the president on last night. I didn't say I'd like to watch it.
That's a good segue, though, because that was one of the things that President Biden talked about in that interview, was that look at what has happened to the media in this country. And it wasn't, I don't think that he intended it to be like a mic drop or, like a gotcha media, but more like a legitimately, like, take a look. And I just want to be clear. We talk a lot about Trump and how much we dislike him. We've talked in the past about President Biden and the fact that we generally, I think, are fans of his, but it's not, I don't think everything he does is perfect. I don't sit here and look for every opportunity to be like, yeah, Joe, you go get him.
Yeah.
There were things there were things he said in that interview that I didn't necessarily agree with, but that was one of the things that stuck out to me, in that it has gotten, it's this erosion of trust in the institutions because they don't deserve it in a lot of cases anymore.
Is it because they don't deserve it, or because that it's become so our attention is so fleeting that they have to figure out ways to grab your attention, right? Which actually erodes integrity.
Okay.
Because, for example, you take a Chris Cuomo, when CNN and Time or Warner Media was backed against the wall, they had to do something to show that please don't lose your trust in our integrity to report the news, right? Because that's their cash cow. Forget the personality. It's the cash cow.
Yeah.
Apparently there was pressure on Fox News about why aren't they showing the January 6th primetime crap. And apparently they changed it because people are like, yeah, that's your freedom of the press crap is crap when it's like the dystopian Japanese like futures and like all the like punk space
animes,
animes, like everything's a corporation. So
except animes are better.
Yeah, you're right. Right. But you see my point. Like there's a limit to, I don't know what I'm saying, but he's not wrong. Like I'm not like, I don't agree with everything that President Biden says.
I think you said a couple of things. I think you talked about how media organizations will do better in the long run to tell the truth, to report the truth, and to do it with integrity and honesty. And yet, I think we've seen time and time again where that's not happening. And I don't know if it's just that they haven't learned that that's what they need to be doing. That it's not... Yes, there is a competition for our fleeting attention, right? Things come at us faster than they ever have before. We have a device in our pockets that makes it easier for us to gain access to information, whether it's, accurate or not. But I don't know that falling in line with that ultimately makes those media organizations... Right, like I think we're admitting that doesn't make them better.
It's aggregation. I think that's the media's problem. I could probably watch every major media or read every outlet's like news stream for the day, and I'm almost guaranteed to find that it's the same story.
Yeah.
And I think that for some reason, whether it's political science or whatever. Actually, science is the rarity. Even like computer stuff, it's all aggregated.
Yeah.
It's somebody else chopping up.
The sources themselves have been aggregated.
Right.
Right? Like, that's the other thing you were talking about earlier, is it's like you can sit there and watch, 50 different local news stations that are all reading from the same script. And it's not some mass conspiracy to feed you information. It's because they're all owned by the same corporations.
Right. I think that's the news media's problem. I think that is the issue that that's going to it's going to make the freedom of the press argument very like mute in like the next 10 years.
Well, I think that coupled with a lack of, or maybe it's like the death in a lot of ways of true investigative journalism.
Sure.
You know,
I don't disagree.
Like I remember watching, I can't remember the name of the movie now, but it's the one with Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman, where they're the.
I surely don't remember that.
I know but it was talking about Watergate, basically the Watergate scandal, and the two reporters for I think it was the Washington Post.
I actually saw those guys. They're on a press circuit right now. Go ahead.
But they were, them doing the actual like investigative journalism to get to the heart of the story, and those types of things I just don't think happen like they used to because there's not the money in it. That long term, like the investment it takes time wise and otherwise. Yeah, no, Joe's got something.
Is that a Chinook?
They found you, Joe.
They fly closer. It's an osprey, but they fly closer to my house every fucking day. I was outside doing some yard work, and I can see I can read the numbers underneath the fucking blades. I'm like, what the fuck? And I looked at my neighbor. Off topic here, little humor, but I looked at my neighbor. I'm like, they're doing this on purpose. They just want to see how close they get to our house before we call and complain. Like, and every fucking time they do that, my DVDs start falling off from my wall, and I have to put them back.
Yep.
But you're not wrong. There is no there. People try to report. Like, I get pissed off when I see like the Washington Post. They're giving tapes of what people are seeing behind closed doors that sure as hell could have helped last year.
Oh yeah,
right.
Or all of the people that were part of the Trump administration that love to spill the beans now that they've got a book that they're releasing. Well, I knew this was treason, but I didn't say anything at the time because I wanted to keep my job until I could write a book and make some money on it. What you got, Joe?
All the President's Men, 1976.
Thank you.
When you said it, I remember the movie because that was the one movie my grandfather forced me to watch over and over and over and over again.
I was born that year.
It's a great film.
It's a really, really good film. Yeah,
I
they
saw
made
it
typewriters look sexy.
Yeah, I mean, whew, Robert Redford in the 70s, man.
I knew he looked familiar when I was watching Winter Soldier. I was like, why does that guy look so fucking familiar?
Yeah, I do know. Yeah.
No, but I mean, like, again, to the point, there's what they're reporting now, right, is stuff that's not helpful in the moment. It's stuff that like you're saying, needed to be reported a year ago when they got this information. And it doesn't make any sense that it's delayed now when they have literally the ability to hit a button and send it out to the entire world all at once. You know, like
that's why if you're an independent journalist out there, and maybe we should start a list. I will, there was a couple guys in Ukraine, as a matter of fact, which is what gave me the idea. I will get a list, and I will send you money for you to do your job.
So I literally had a thought earlier this year
for combative journalism,
or journalists in period, like real true journalists, right?
I was debating whether or not I should go back to school and go to journalism school.
Why do you need to go to school? You just do it.
Well, just to make sure
you
that I
have
do
the
it
platform.
right.
You have the podcast. You can guise this as part of your journalism.
Yeah, but I feel
avenue.
like I want to understand the basics of like journalistic integrity and sources and
journalism
all of that
for
stuff.
dummies.
Just do the exact opposite of whatever
CNN is doing. Yeah, I mean, there's that. Like, I mean, but I thought about that too. You know, I don't know. Well, both.
Chris.
That I've thought about the fact that we have a platform that, like, this is something that I could just start doing tomorrow if I wanted to.
Chris.
Yes, Joe.
Stop overthinking it. You're already doing it right now. You're literally doing it right now. All you have to do is find. All you have to do is become your own source for a couple things, and boom, you're official.
Well, fun fact: Caitlin Collins was a blogger, and then she got picked up by CNN. Like real talk. So
yeah, and to be honest, that's the opposite of what I want to have happen to me. Like I don't want to, but I hear what you're saying.
The barrier to entry is no longer what it used to be.
Yeah,
we talked about it a couple weeks ago that 70 to 80% of all journalists are
Ivy League or
they come from upper class families.
Yep.
Yeah. There's their bias in their stories, right? There's a bias in the things they cover.
Yeah.
You can't trust that.
Maybe I just need to watch more journalist movies.
They fucking make reviews on Quiche. Who makes reviews on Quiche? Fuck Quiche.
I mean, why is the Today Show, which I really enjoy, why is that considered a news story, like a news show?
I don't know.
It's an entertainment show.
But same with Fox News, right? They're not actually. You ever notice it's Fox News Channel?
Yeah,
It's not just Fox News. Like Fox News is not actually a news station. It's because it is cable and not broadcast. They are not held to the same standards as ABC, CBS, and those guys when they're doing actual news, like the things that they label as news. There are different standards that the FCC holds those broadcast stations to because they are broadcast over,
public airwaves.
Public airwaves, but because it is cable news. CNN,
which still uses the same band to communicate. So
but,
I think that I think there's hypocrisy there.
Oh, I mean, there's hypocrisy almost everywhere, except on the Chris and Andre show. No, obviously, we've probably been hypocrites at times too, but
I try not to be. But I
me too.
I think in the middle of the road is there, and I'll go back to the conversation I had a couple weeks ago with 10 different people about guns, and I think this is like. It's a serious topic, and we've figured out a way to actually have the conversation. There's an air over the country where we're just not engaging anymore. Even people that want to be engaged in the process I have a sense that people are losing faith in our system to actually fix it. And I'm really starting to believe, and just from what I see in Congress and their representation, that we've created like false elected classes. We've created false like classes of people that don't really exist. Like how we look at the media, how we look at social media. And this is not the crap on social media, but it's just saying like we are creating layers in a class system and a caste system in our country.
You said those literally the word that was stuck in my head as you were saying this. I'm like, yeah, it's a caste system. That's exactly what it is. Like,
so
unknowingly.
Why don't you guys check this out for a second? We were talking about John Oliver and Stephen Colbert and all of them in reference to their info news shows.
Yeah, the infotainment.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you said that. So I was like, you know what? At what point does satire become like real news? Just like lazy.
Does it become commentary?
It becomes actual commentary in the situation, and especially with John Oliver's most recent video about the school resource officers. They're getting very on topic, and they're getting noticed quite a bit. Other than us watching it for fun or for actual information. If you type in the late night last week tonight with John Oliver, underneath it pops up the episode list and when they were aired like a normal TV show does. Just go a little bit further down, and he's actually news. He is news. You got news outlets like the New York Post doing entire segments
reporting what he talks about.
Yeah, Deadline, Rolling Stones, all these different news outlets are actually springboarding off of what he's saying and creating real news. So, but maybe it's we as a nation are so sick and tired of the realistic approach to how news is shared, and we're jaded, and that just having somebody put a veneer of irony and social commentary on something that's actually happening makes it more digestible.
Or maybe we don't trust the news media, right?
Oh, no, I don't.
They're not interested in doing their jobs.
I have more faith that Playboy magazine will put a credible article than New York Times.
Well, me too.
I think honestly, I think it's somewhere in the middle, and that's not just to be like, the third voice in the room is like, guys, I think we're both saying the same thing. I think there is, like, it's both, really. Like, I think there's a level of jadedness, there's a level of distrust, there's a level of needing these horrible things to be presented in a more digestible format. And that it's so, right, it's nauseating to sit there and watch even like local news on a regular basis, because you feel like sometimes it's overwhelming how bad everything seems, right?
God,
and so you turn to stuff like these guys where you're getting not the same information, but you're getting a lot of the same types of topics, things that they're talking about that are very serious, that are having very negative real world impacts on people.
They're coming at it from a very different light.
Yeah, and they mix just a little bit of humor, then just a little bit of entertainment in there. But at the end of it, like, I think Jon Stewart was one of the ones that did it really, really well, 15 years ago with The Daily Show, where it was like, guys, this is crazy. But when you walked away from it, like, you were still thinking, like, wow, he's right. Like,
on the flip side of it, you'll have like somebody from the Washington Post that went to the Correspondence Center that said, but Trevor Noah is just a comedian.
Right, yeah. And
so
yet more people trust Trevor Noah and John Oliver to get their information about this country than they do the news media from this country.
Right, and I think that, and you're probably not wrong. There's a little bit of everything mixed in there. Maybe the country is becoming cynical. Maybe the country is jaded on how we, or they need like more palatable like ways to digest the information. I don't know. I don't believe
because this generation is soft. We need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and eat our news with a.
We don't wear boots anymore. We wear Crocs.
So anybody that would ever tell me that, I would say, well, you're softer, because when things get hard for me and I have to do the work, I'm going to do the work.
Your argument is no. You are.
No, but see,
I'll tell him flat out.
You do that, and I've seen you do that. Like, I know that that's you. I don't know how many other people fit that same bill. Like, and I'm not just saying from like new generations and stuff, but just across the board. This is where I think like the critical thinking point that I was making earlier about that people are so lazy that when they hear something that confirms their worldview, they don't bother to fact check it. They don't bother to see where the source is coming from. If it makes them feel better about whatever it is that they're going through or whatever shit is happening in their life, then they'll just swallow it and blame somebody else. It's like that's the thing that seems to be assumed or accepted more often than not, is when you're blaming somebody else.
Well, I'll wrap it up with this. I think this is what, like, where my emotional state keeps going back to. We keep letting ugly, dirty things happen in this country. We kill somebody and we record it and we show the whole world for 9 minutes. We kill our elderly and we talk about it and we hope and we send thoughts and prayers that that's going to fix it. We keep killing our children. We say, hey, go to school and learn. And by the way, just duck. And
I mean, preschoolers. My daughter was literally the last day of school. They practice mass shooter scenarios where they're hiding underneath tables and stuff like that, and using their book bags to block themselves. And I'm like, when my 6-year-old told me that, I was like, oh shit.
Like, I can't. I'm grateful that I'm grateful my kids aren't in school anymore, because that's one more thing I have to worry about. I already have to worry about them not being white in this country. I don't want them to have to be a target in school. I think we're a country of people we are soft. It's not millennials. It's not Gen Z or whoever you want to blame it on. It's not a generational thing. I think that is getting so played out. It's not a generational problem. It's the fact that we as a country don't have the balls to do the right thing. We don't understand what a say I won't moment is until it's your kid that gets killed in school, until it's your grandmother that dies of COVID, until we don't give a flying shit about anybody but ourselves. And we pretend that we do. And that's what That's what I keep concluding. I'm like, I don't think we care. I don't believe we care. And the reason I really don't believe we care is that I don't know if I could literally hold an office that could influence that, whether it be local, state, or government, and not do something different the minute it happened. I just couldn't. There's some things I'm just not going to bend on. And it's not about people being soft. You don't believe in what you're saying. You just don't. You don't value life. Even if you want to give me the Second Amendment argument, sure, okay. But tell me where the Second Amendment says that you should have, because you have a technical advantage over your opponent, you should take advantage of it. Is that in there? It's not. Is the target of your aggression the government? It was not. So whatever we say we believe, it's bullshit. I'm going to cap it off with the cherry. The generational thing is that's going to end this country in a tailspin. We have turned us against them internally as a country. And I think that's dangerous. I don't think there's anything wrong with a millennial saying, hey, I don't want to work 70 hours a week for $40,000 a week. Yeah. I think that's a very rational thing to say.
I would gladly work that much for that much money. I'm never going to come close to that.
Joe, shut up. You're ruining this for everybody else.
Fuck it. Everyone else can have what they want. I need $40,000.
It's not my point.
You're only going to get like 26 take home.
Just do it. That's still more than a full-time firefighter. Let's do it.
I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody saying, hey, college is expensive. That's literally what people are saying. College is expensive. There's no real true ROI. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not about you getting more than what I was. No, the way we look at our problems is so archaic. It's irrational. And we wonder why we can't solve this gun problem.
Yep.
It's not a can.
We say it's mental health. It's not mental health. Mental health doesn't give this person a gun. Like, has nothing to do with it. Mental health has nothing to do with him buying 300 plus rounds of ammunition or a bump stock. None of those things are true. Pistol grip. Or a pistol grip. Mental health doesn't say, well, we just need one entry into a school.
Or drug magazines.
There's a lot of things where it's like, we can't even talk about things and be honest about them.
Or suppressors.
And we blame it on, well, this generation. It's not the generation. Your kids learn to lie because you as a parent taught your kids to lie the minute you said, we can't go to the park because I got home from work late. Your lazy ass doesn't want to take your kid to the park. Just say you don't want to take him to the park. Those are be honest and truthful about things. Stop.
Yeah, if you've been honest and truthful with them, they'll understand when you have to tell them why you can't do something.
Yeah, kids learn things because of what parents teach them and expose them to, not because of some generational gap. You think kids just miraculously appeared out of nowhere? No, it's not true. It bothers me, this whole generational thing. Well, who taught your kid to be racist? The same people that taught the people that were kids when my mom was a kid to call my mom a nigger. They had kids. And what did they teach them? The same thing that I still have to deal with at almost 46 years old. It's not a generational problem. Well, it is. But the parents have got to take responsibility. So I hope as a country, I hope as a country we can actually, learn how to have these conversations the right way. I doubt it. I don't believe we care enough. Nobody's going to care enough until the problem hits their front door.
And by then it'll be way too late.
Yep.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our conversation on the Big Rant, talking about gun control for tonight. I know it was a pretty heavy subject, and we appreciate you sticking with us for the whole thing. Obviously, we have some very strong opinions on this. It probably won't be the last time we talk about this because, unfortunately, this is probably not the last time that we're going to have some tragedy like this occur in this country. But, there's definitely something that all of us can do to make a change in this. So, have those conversations, I think, is what it really boils down to. We really appreciate you guys joining us. As always, you can find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram. I'm no longer on Twitter because I deleted the Twitter app from my phone, and I've never been happier. You can listen to us, if you're listening to us, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Be sure to give us a 5-star review. Let us know how much you love the show. You can watch us on YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe, like the video, and hit the little notification bell so that you get alerts whenever we post something new. I don't know, anything else that I'm leaving out here? Oh yeah, if you got something you want to share with us, you can email us at comments@chrisandandreshow.com. You can reach me directly at chris@chrisandandreshow.com.
You can always find me at andre@chrisandandreshow.com. And friend of the show, Joe.
Look up Fireside Joe on TikTok. This close to 1,000 followers. And when that happens, I'll do weekly bonfires. So people can just chill out and
weird.
watch. What?
Okay.
It's part of my name. I need to use a second cell phone for something.
Yeah. As always.
I just thought about I can have different types of stuffed animals and people can vote on which one to burn.
There's an idea.
That's a little bit weirder. But
that could work.
As always, I'm Andre.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Hey guys, it's Chris from the Chris and Andre Show here. Just wanted to say thanks for checking out our show. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would, subscribe, make sure to hit the notification bell so you get alerts when we post new videos, and leave a comment with your favorite part of the most recent episode that you watched. We'll see you on the next one.